With Florence now in our rear view, we want to take a look back at the forecast for Florence. And certainly in the days leading up to Florence, there was some uncertainty, especially with some of the changes that were happening in the modeling just a few days out from its landfall during the morning hours of Friday morning up towards Wilmington. Now, once we got a little better focus, though, headed into that landfall, especially on Friday morning, we were able to nail down some of those impacts that we were expecting here across the Low Country. So we want to take a look back at what we were forecasting and what actually ended up playing out.
Georgetown, you're our focus for the highest threats. Murrells Inlet down to Litchfield, Pawleys, and Georgetown will take the most significant hit from this in the form of wind damage, where you could see occasional gusts up to 75 in some of these stronger bands. It's not going to be like that the whole time, but you could see some gusts. So we do have an elevated to potentially significant wind threat for you just because it's going to be such a long duration. The flooding threat is the major issue here, I think, up in Georgetown County, where 5 to 10 inches of rain will fall. Isolated 12-inch plus amounts, just depending on where these bands set up.
We'll cross over to Williamsburg County. Now we're looking at Kingstree and Lane. Also wind gusts maybe about 65 miles an hour. Could see potentially 5 to 10 inches of rain for you.
So as you just heard Rob and Josh talking about Williamsburg and Georgetown counties being some of the highest impacted areas for us, we certainly saw that play out, especially as we headed through the weekend hours into the day, Saturday and Sunday, where we continued to see rain bands set up over those counties and continue to drop a lot of rain. Not a lot of totals coming out of those counties quite yet, again, because the Wilmington office that handles the data for these two counties still dealing with a lot of issues with all of that rain up across eastern Carolina, especially into Wilmington right now. So we don't have a lot of data coming out, but you can see up towards Pawleys Island, 15, almost 16 inches of rain recorded out of Florence. Look down towards Georgetown proper, and it's a little bit lower. We're still talking about 5 inches there. And in Williamsburg County out towards Kingstree, you're talking almost 8 inches of rain across those areas. So those rainfall totals really did play out pretty nicely.
Here in Charleston, you might see a big difference between the upper portion of the county and the lower portion of the county, but still we could see wind gusts around 50 miles an hour, and depending on where you are, the lower part of the county would probably see the lower end of the rainfall, 2 inches. The upper part of the county up towards McClellanville, you could potentially see 8 inches.
Charleston County, as you just heard, one of the trickiest areas to forecast for because it was going to be feast or famine, with some of those areas in the lower part of the county seeing not a whole lot at all, whereas areas up to the north seeing quite a bit. So up towards South Santee, that recording being one of the highest rainfall totals across Charleston County at 4¼ inches of rain. So that forecast verifies. Notice how it drops pretty quickly, though, once you go from McClellanville to Awendaw, where you're talking about the difference between almost 4 inches of rain in McClellanville to just shy of 2 inches of rain there in Awendaw, and it drops pretty quickly as we head through here. Charleston Airport recording 1 inch of rain out there in North Charleston out of Florence, and as you look towards Megget there in lower Charleston County, even towards Edisto Island, you're seeing some of those lower rainfall totals.
Berkeley County, your threats: elevated wind damage issues, a flooding threat as well is close to significant, as you can see 6 to 8 inches in the northern end of the county, 2 to 5 inches a little bit farther south.
Berkeley County was another tricky county where we were expecting higher rainfall totals closer to that center of circulation up across the northern tier, and some lower rainfall totals a little bit further to the south. And this verified pretty nicely. We're up towards St. Stephen and Limerick. You're looking at upwards of 4 inches of rain. When you look into the lower part of the county down towards Jedburgh, Goose Creek, and even Daniel Island, you're talking more a ½ inch to around 1.5 inches of rain, a little bit on the lower side of that spectrum as far as our rainfall totals go there.
Wind damage threat in Dorchester County, you can see occasional gusts of 50, so you've got an elevated threat for wind. Flooding rain, 2 to 4 inches of rain, isolated 4-inch plus amounts.
Dorchester County seeing some of the lower rainfall totals, and as you just heard in that forecast, we were expecting around 2, maybe a little bit higher inches of rain. Most areas in Dorchester County anywhere from about ½ inch of rain to 1.5 inches of rain. So that rainfall forecast a little on the higher side, but we weren't necessarily even in Dorchester County expecting any sort of major flooding issues out of that rainfall forecast.
Walterboro, Canadees, Cottageville, chances of you seeing significant rainfall much less, because you're a little bit farther away from the center of the storm, but still could see some wind gusts up to 45 miles per hour.
And Colleton County saw some of the lowest rainfall totals across our area, with most areas seeing around a half an inch of rain. Rondo clocking in at the highest rainfall total there with 0.8 of an inch of rain. So that forecast a little bit on the higher side there, but they do still see a little bit of rain. It's important to remember when we talk about Florence, it made landfall near Wilmington, North Carolina. Had it been just 50 miles south, we would have seen very different impacts for us here in the low country. In fact, you notice the difference between what happened here in Colleton County and what happened across Georgetown and Williamsburg County. It's important to remember just that little joggle could have made a huge difference. So certainly for us, most of us here in the low country, we have dodged a bullet. I'm meteorologist Chrissy Kohler.